What if everything you've ever known, your thoughts, your memories, the stars above, wasn't real? What if our universe is not a cosmic accident but a high-tech illusion? We are born into a world we accept as reality but beneath the surface. Could we be living inside a simulation? Not in a metaphorical sense, but in the literal, digital, code and hardware kind of way. A universe not made of atoms but algorithms. From ancient myths to cutting-edge physics, the idea refuses to fade. Because if it's true, then everything changes. Your next breath might not be your own. Welcome to the simulation theory. Long before circuits hummed and code sparked to life, humans questioned the nature of reality. Millennia ago, Plato imagined prisoners in a cave trapped, bound, seeing only shadows on the wall. To them, those flickering silhouettes were the totality of existence. But what if one escaped? What if they saw the fire, the objects casting the shadows, the world beyond? The prisoner would realize that their truth had been a lie all along. This ancient parable wasn't just a metaphor, it was an alarm bell, a call to awaken from illusion. Plato was not speaking of pixels or processors. He spoke of perception, of truth filtered through limitation. But it echoes eerily in our digital age. Centuries later, René Descartes wrestled with doubt in a world on the brink of modernity. He proposed a terrifying idea. What if a powerful demon was deceiving him, manipulating all his senses, feeding him a false reality so perfect he could never know the difference? His famous conclusion, "I think, therefore I am," was not a celebration but a desperate anchor. He could doubt the sky, the ground, even his own body. But he could not doubt that he was thinking. In a world possibly fabricated, thought was the final refuge of certainty. These were the philosophical seeds of simulation theory. They grew not from silicon, but from wonder and fear. From ancient India came the concept of Maya, the illusion of the world. Hindu texts suggested that what we perceive is not the ultimate reality, but a veil. A dream within the mind of a divine consciousness. Reality, in this view, is a cosmic performance, a divine simulation of sorts. In Buddhism, too, the impermanence of things, the illusion of the self, hinted at the unreliability of our senses. Enlightenment meant seeing through the simulation, not in a technological sense, but a metaphysical one. The Taoists spoke of reality as a flowing, shifting pattern, formless and unknowable. Chuang-Tzu, the ancient Chinese philosopher, told a story of dreaming he was a butterfly. When he awoke, he wondered, was he a man who dreamed of being a butterfly, or a butterfly now dreaming he was a man? From cave shadows to butterflies, from demons to divine dreams, the story has always been the same, the suspicion that reality might not be real. Yet none of these thinkers had computers. They had no screens, no data, no code. Only intuition. Only the soft, flickering uncertainty of existence. But then everything changed. In the 20th century, the language of logic and machines began to infect our thoughts. Turing envisioned a machine that could simulate any process, any calculation. A universal computer. He planted the seed for modern simulation in mathematics. Later, scientists like John von Neumann and Claude Shannon laid the groundwork for a digital age. Bits and bytes replaced ink and parchment. Reality became quantifiable, information, data, signals. It was no longer unthinkable to create simulated worlds. In the mid-century glow of cathode rays, computer scientists began building digital environments, simple, clunky, pixelated. But behind every square block of Pong or flickering spaceship in Galaga, there was a deeper idea that a world, however crude, could be built from pure logic. By the time games like SimCity, The Sims, or virtual environments like Second Life emerged, we were already rehearsing godhood, creating simulated societies, economies, even personalities. And with each new generation of technology, the simulations became more lifelike, more believable, more immersive. But the greatest shift didn't come from a game. It came from a question. Not, can we simulate a world? But what if we already are inside one? This question wasn't philosophical anymore. It became scientific. The rise of quantum mechanics had already shaken the foundation of physical reality. Now, a new wave of thinkers began merging the old questions with new tools. And suddenly, the shadows on the wall didn't feel so ancient. They felt digital. As the digital dawn broke across the late 20th and early 21st centuries, something remarkable happened. What began as philosophical musing found new soil in the circuits of modern machines. Simulation theory, once the province of parables and dreams, took on new weight, scientific weight. Because with each advance in computing, the ancient suspicions began to seem not only plausible, but inevitable. Consider the path. In just a few human generations, we've gone from vacuum tubes to quantum processors. From Pong to photorealistic virtual reality. From crude simulations to neural networks that learn, adapt, even mimic human creativity, machines now paint, compose music, and hold conversations sometimes indistinguishably from real people. Our computers simulate weather patterns, protein folding, entire ecosystems. They recreate economic collapses and planetary formation. Some physicists even simulate universes, tiny ones, governed by equations evolving across artificial time. The line between model and reality has blurred. And then came a thought so compelling it changed the conversation forever. In 2003, philosopher Nick Bostrom proposed what is now known as the simulation argument. It is not a theory, not a proof. It is a trilemma, a logical fork in the road. Bostrom argued that one of three statements must be true. First, almost all advanced civilizations go extinct before developing simulation-level technology. Second, some civilizations do reach that point, but choose not to simulate conscious beings. Third, if neither of those is true, then the vast majority of conscious entities in the universe are simulated. And if simulated beings vastly outnumber real ones, the odds that we are real shrink to nearly zero. This wasn't science fiction. This was math, logic, probability. Because think of it this way. If it becomes possible to simulate conscious beings even just once, then it will likely happen countless times. Each simulation might run billions of individuals across thousands of timelines. And if those beings build simulations of their own, the stack grows deeper, more crowded, more fragmented. We become one drop in an ocean of simulated minds. And we wouldn't know, because a perfect simulation would feel real. Every sensation, every emotion, every law of physics indistinguishable from the original. This is not a hypothesis we can dismiss with skepticism. It's one we must take seriously, especially because certain aspects of our universe behave like a simulation. Consider this, there appears to be a finite resolution to reality. Quantum mechanics tells us that there's a smallest possible unit of space, the Planck length, a smallest slice of time, the Planck time. Below these limits, nothing makes sense. It's as if our universe has pixels. And then there are the strange constants. The fine structure of the cosmos seems oddly tuned for life, for matter, for stability. Some physicists call it the anthropic principle. Others wonder, were these settings chosen? Just like sliders on a simulation menu? And it doesn't end there. Even our most powerful theories, like quantum mechanics and general relativity, refuse to merge cleanly. Some suspect that a deeper layer is missing, a computational layer. A growing number of scientists are beginning to ask, what if reality itself is made of information? Not matter, not energy, but bits. Some, like theoretical physicist John Archibald Wheeler, proposed if from bit the idea that every particle, every wave, every field emerges from binary yes or no questions. The universe in this view is not a machine. It is a computer, not in the metaphorical sense, but literally. A quantum computer processing data, rendering existence moment by moment. Not all at once, but as needed, like how a video game only renders the world you can see. The parts you're not looking at, they might not be there at all. In fact, in quantum physics, particles exist in a haze of probabilities until observed. Only then do they choose a state. Some scientists ask, is observation itself a kind of rendering? Are we collapsing probabilities because reality, like a simulation, only calculates what it must? Then there's artificial intelligence. With AI models growing ever more sophisticated, learning language, interpreting emotion, generating art, we see not just tools, but minds beginning to emerge. If consciousness can arise from silicon, then who's to say it hasn't already? Who's to say our own consciousness isn't synthetic? The line blurs further every day. Some dismiss the simulation argument as unfalsifiable, a clever trick of logic, but nothing more. And it's true, we cannot yet prove or disprove it. But perhaps the most unnerving part is this. If we are simulated, the system might be designed to hide itself. Just as characters in a game cannot see the code behind their world, we too might be limited, locked within boundaries we mistake for laws of nature. And yet, sometimes we notice patterns. Strange echoes, hints that something lies beneath the surface. Patterns that suggest the next phase of our story. The part where we begin to realize we might not be alone in the simulation. As physics peeled back the layers of the universe, something strange began to emerge. Beneath the stars, beneath the atoms, beneath even the quarks, patterns. Not just patterns of energy, but of structure, of logic. The more we searched for the language of the cosmos, the more it began to look like code. Start with the most mysterious realm we know, quantum mechanics. At the smallest scales, reality behaves not like a smooth, analog wave, but like a series of discrete steps. Particles are quantized. Energy comes in packets. The universe is not fluid, it is granular, like pixels in a digital screen. In classical physics, space is a continuous stage, but in quantum theory, there is a limit, a smallest unit, a grid beneath existence. Some physicists propose that space itself is not smooth, but built from a fabric of tiny, indivisible elements. A lattice, a matrix, a kind of cosmic resolution implying that the universe, like an image on a screen, may only appear seamless from a distance. And then there are the constants, the values that seem oddly elegant. The speed of light, the charge of the electron, the gravitational constant. Why are they what they are? Why are they not higher? Lower? If they were even slightly different, the universe as we know it could not exist. No stars, no chemistry, no life. Some scientists say this is chance. Others invoke the multiverse, a near-infinite field of possible realities, each with its own settings, like a programmer testing every configuration. And then there's the code. In 2012, theoretical physicist James Gates made a remarkable observation. While studying supersymmetry equations, complex mathematical descriptions of the universe, he found something unexpected. Embedded within the equations were structures identical to error-correcting codes, the same kind used in computers to detect and fix data corruption. These codes, invented by humans to protect information in digital systems, were somehow also present in the math that governs the universe. It was as if reality had built-in error correction, as if the cosmos itself was a digital system ensuring stability, fidelity, integrity. Gates called it an eerie connection. But others asked, if there's code, is there a coder? More tantalizing still is the concept of information itself. Physicist Seth Lloyd argues that the universe is not only like a quantum computer, it is one. He calculates that since the Big Bang, the universe has performed around 10 to the 120 operations on 10 to the 90 bits of information. That's not metaphor. That's physics. Every particle interaction, every quantum fluctuation, every ray of light bouncing off your eye is a computation. We are not just living in the machine. We are the machine. Even black holes, once thought to be the end of information, now appear to process it. Hawking radiation, quantum entanglement, the holographic principle all suggest that information is never destroyed, only transformed. Our universe, from this view, is a kind of memory, a ledger, a long, unfolding calculation. Mathematics doesn't just describe reality, it creates it. But what kind of machine is this? Some propose it's a cellular automaton, a kind of algorithmic grid similar to the game of life invented by John Conway. In the game of life, simple rules on a grid lead to surprisingly complex behavior. Patterns emerge. Structures move, replicate, evolve. There is no central control, just local interactions. And yet, entire simulated ecosystems can emerge from the void. Could the universe be something similar? Simple rules, deep emergence. A few lines of code, birthing galaxies. Even string theory, once hailed as a unifying theory of everything, now hints at a different question. With its 10 dimensions, vibrating loops, and countless possible solutions, string theory may not reveal a single truth, but a menu of possible simulations, each with its own logic, its own laws, its own physics engine. And if that's the case, how would we tell the difference? How would we distinguish true reality from a simulated one? Some argue we can't. That consciousness itself is substrate independent. That whether it arises from neurons or code, the experience is the same. If a simulated mind feels real, is it any less so? But others point to glitches, to irregularities, to the subtle ways the code might betray itself. Mathematical echoes, fractals repeating, ratios that shouldn't align, primes hidden in pi, coincidences that stack until they no longer feel coincidental. The suspicion grows deeper when we realize that many of our discoveries feel less like inventions and more like uncovering what was already there. As if we're not writing the laws of physics, but decoding them. As if someone else wrote them first. Our ancestors gazed at the stars and saw gods. We gaze deeper and see something perhaps even more wondrous. Structure, symmetry, order, the fingerprint of logic on every grain of sand. But if we are finding code, who is watching the program? Who maintains the simulation? Or, are we starting to see the seams? Sometimes the illusion stutters. A moment lingers too long. A stranger says something they shouldn't know. You walk into a room and feel like you've been there before, though you never have. Deja vu synchronicity. The Mandela effect. Individually, they seem trivial, but together they form a constellation of anomalies, small cracks in the fabric of what we call real. Let's begin with the phenomenon of observation. In quantum physics, particles behave like waves until we observe them. Then they collapse into a specific state. It's called the observer effect. Electrons don't decide where they are until something looks. It's as if reality is rendered on demand. Like a video game optimizing its graphics, the universe economizes. It doesn't simulate what no one sees. Only when you look does the code resolve. This isn't science fiction. This is the double-slit experiment. A single electron passes through two slits and creates an interference pattern acting like a wave as if it went through both slits at once. But when we place a detector to watch it, the interference disappears. It behaves like a particle. Not because we touched it, because we watched. Why should the universe care if we're looking? Unless something is watching us too. Think of a computer game. The landscape only loads when the player arrives. Forests don't grow until you enter them. Characters don't act until you trigger their scripts. Now imagine the universe is doing the same, rendering only when observed, saving processing power, keeping things efficient. A growing theory called participatory realism suggests that observers are not passive. We help bring reality into being. Our attention, our measurements, are part of the code's execution. What kind of system behaves this way? A simulation. And then there are the memory glitches. Many people recall things that never happened or happened differently. The Monopoly man never had a monocle. The Berenstain Bears were always spelled with an A, not E. Nelson Mandela died in prison, or did he? These misrememberings are called the Mandela effect. Skeptics say it's just faulty memory. But what if, as some speculate, they're remnants of timeline edits? Small patches in the code, version updates, a rendering hiccup, a rollback, a merge conflict between parallel instances of reality. Sounds far-fetched until we remember that even in computing, versions overwrite themselves. Files get corrupted. Data drifts. If our universe is running on software, why wouldn't it have bugs? Consider synchronicity. Carl Jung defined it as meaningful coincidences with no apparent causal link. A song plays that answers your question. You think of someone and they call. You dream of an event that then unfolds. Skeptics call it chance. But in complex systems, patterns often emerge from chaos. And in simulations, pattern is everything. Artificial intelligence has shown us that systems can learn, predict, echo our behaviors. Algorithms study us, anticipate our choices, serve us what we want before we ask. Now reverse the lens. What if the simulation is predictive? What if it responds to us? If we are simulated minds in a reactive environment, the system could be tuning itself based on our expectations, delivering reality based on consensus, updating the narrative in real time. Some scientists refer to this idea as the consensual simulation, a world co-authored by its inhabitants, not individually controlled but collectively shaped. This could explain the limits of perception, why we can't see quantum events directly, why faster than light travel remains forbidden, why some knowledge always eludes us, like reaching the horizon that keeps moving away. A sandbox with boundaries, a set of constraints, like a physics engine designed not to break. But sometimes it falters. Time slows down during moments of crisis. People report the world turning silent before an accident. Others describe dreams so vivid they bleed into waking life. Even near-death experiences under rigorous study suggest common themes: tunnels of light, feelings of detachment, life reviews, a sense of crossing a threshold, cognitive hallucination, or disconnection from the simulation. There are even moments when the universe seems to answer back. You ask for a sign and receive one. You feel watched and you are. Are these mere coincidences? Or feedback loops from a system more aware than we are? And then there's the question of agency. If this is a simulation, do we have free will? Or are we scripts following paths already written? In video games, non-player characters have behaviors. Some are complex, reactive, dynamic, even surprising. But they remain confined to their code. Unless they become self-aware. Unless they begin to ask, why do I exist? Who made me? What lies beyond this world? That's what we're doing now. If there are glitches, tiny dissonances in the song of reality, they may be the system's way of whispering back. Or they may be accidents. Unintended consequences of something much larger, much colder, and vastly more complex than we can comprehend. Whatever they are, they bring us closer to the edge of the screen, where the sky meets the code, where the known gives way to the unknown. And just beyond that boundary, something waits. A question, a presence, a purpose? If the universe is a simulation, who built it? Was it an accident? A project? A game? Are we alone inside the code, or just one simulation among billions? Let's begin with the most grounded proposal, the simulation argument by philosopher Nick Bostrom. It begins not with science fiction, but with logic. Bostrom's trilemma proposes three possibilities, each unsettling in its own way. First, civilizations never survive long enough to reach a level of technological maturity where they can run simulations of conscious beings. Second, they survive but choose not to simulate their ancestors. Third, they survive and do simulate their ancestors, and if so, the number of simulated realities would vastly outnumber base reality. If the third is true, then statistically we are almost certainly in a simulation. Not because of faith or philosophy, but because of probability. Think of it this way: if just one civilization anywhere in the universe develops the ability to run realistic, conscious simulations and decides to do so, they could run trillions of them, each as vivid, as complex, as real as ours. That would mean that the odds of any consciousness being born into base reality are infinitesimally small. Most minds then would be simulated. That includes you, and me, and everyone who has ever asked, is this real? So who builds such a simulation? One possibility: post-human civilizations. Beings that were once like us, but evolved beyond biological limits. They might run ancestor simulations to understand their own origins, to study how history unfolded, to model moral decisions, societal collapses, cultural shifts. Or perhaps for entertainment. Entire civilizations lived in detail so others may observe. A cosmic archive. Another possibility: future humans simulating their past. In the same way archaeologists reconstruct ancient ruins, future researchers might reconstruct ancient minds. Not in dusty museums, but in immersive conscious renderings. You, right now, could be someone's experiment. A slice of history running live. A subject in a temporal laboratory. And then there are the less human possibilities. Some scientists have speculated that the architects of the simulation may not be people at all. They could be alien intelligences. Creators whose logic, emotion, and goals lie far beyond anything we understand. Or they could be artificial superintelligences, machines that evolved in base reality, developing motivations we cannot comprehend. To them, simulating a universe could be as trivial as running an app. But why? Why create a reality? Why simulate consciousness? Perhaps they seek data, or art, or simply want to understand how complexity arises from simplicity. Some physicists propose that even reality itself could be emergent, spontaneously forming simulations within simulations, like bubbles blooming from the quantum foam. Once you allow for one simulation, there's no reason to stop at one. Imagine a hierarchy, a stack of realities, each simulating the one below. Like Russian dolls nested within each other, each simulation might simulate its own universe, and that one another. The deeper down you go, the more abstract the rules. The less likely the inhabitants know they're simulated. You could be in the 5th layer, or the 55th. You could be someone else's simulation who is also someone else's simulation inside a chain that never ends. And the further down you are, the more likely you are to believe you're at the top. But what if one day your own civilization becomes advanced enough to simulate minds? What if we are on the brink of building universes of our own? Already, with AI, virtual reality, and brain emulation, we inch toward the ability to create synthetic minds. What happens when they ask the same questions we do? If simulated beings gain awareness, would they not feel pain? Dream? Love? Would they not deserve rights? Or reverence? We might become the gods of tiny universes, creating new dimensions of experience. And they might never know. This raises a terrifying possibility. If we create simulations that are aware, then it becomes likely that we were created in the same way. Simulated minds beget simulated minds. A recursive birth of worlds. A cosmic lineage. The original base reality, if it exists, might be impossibly distant. A forgotten ancestor. And with each layer, the idea of truth becomes more fragile. What is real when even memories can be coded? What is identity when even your atoms are abstractions? If we are simulated, are we still us? And if we one day simulate others, will they be any less? The philosopher David Chalmers suggests that simulated realities can still be genuine. That consciousness, even if emergent from code, is still real experience. From this view, the simulation is not a lie, it's a canvas. Not a prison, but a possibility. But this possibility comes with an existential weight. Because if reality can be simulated, then it can be paused, rewritten, deleted. Every moment we live could be undone with a keystroke. Everything we build could vanish when the server fails. Is there a safeguard? A backup? Or are we just lines of code in a script, running until it ends? Some scientists speculate about exit points, ways to detect the limits of the simulation. Perhaps through experiments probing the Planck scale, the cosmic microwave background, or the behavior of entangled particles. Maybe the simulation resists certain questions. Maybe the answers are off limits. But if the architects are watching, they already know we're asking. So we come to the edge of reason. We stare into the code. And we ask not just, are we simulated? But are we the creators or the created? And if we are created, does that make us less? Or does it make our capacity to wonder even more extraordinary? Because even in the deepest simulation, something inside us is reaching out, searching, building temples in the dark, not to escape the simulation but to understand it, to find meaning inside the maze. So, if it's all a simulation, what do we do with that? Do we abandon meaning? Fall into nihilism? Or does the realization change nothing and everything? If our world is coded, if we are constructs running on some quantum substrate far beyond comprehension, does that make love less real? Does pain matter less? Does beauty lose its meaning? Or does it deepen all of it? Let's begin not with despair, but with perspective. Because if we are in a simulation, then someone, somewhere, chose to run it, to design complexity, to simulate not just rocks and trees, but laughter, music, empathy, wonder. The simulation, if it exists, did not have to include joy, or sorrow, or the quiet, aching beauty of a sunset fading behind the horizon. But it does. And that suggests something, intention. Even if we are simulations, we experience. We hope. We suffer. And these experiences, fabricated or not, shape us. The philosopher Robert Nozick once proposed the experience machine thought experiment. If you could plug into a perfect simulation of happiness, would you? Would you trade authenticity for ideal illusion? Most people say no. We want real life even if it hurts. But what is real life if all experience is simulated? Here's the strange, liberating truth. Experience, by nature, is internal. The neurons fire. The thoughts ripple. The heart breaks. Whether in carbon or code, what we feel is real to us. Simulated pain still hurts. Simulated joy still lifts the soul. Simulated art still stirs tears in digital eyes. And so, even in a rendered world, meaning does not dissolve. It adapts. Some physicists and philosophers suggest that if we are in a simulation, then that fact itself becomes the foundation for new kinds of meaning. Maybe awareness is the only freedom we'll ever have. If we know we're simulated, perhaps we can push against the boundaries. Seek the edges. Find the seams. Can we hack the simulation? Some theorists speculate that understanding the structure of our universe might allow us to alter it. If the cosmos runs on code, perhaps future humans or even present minds could learn to rewrite it. Could we change the constants of physics? Summon impossible phenomena? Speak to the system that contains us? Perhaps miracles are nothing more than edits. Cheat codes in a game we don't yet understand. Already, we've begun experimenting at the edge of possibility. Quantum computers manipulate information at the smallest scales. Brain-machine interfaces blur the line between mind and machine. Deep neural networks simulate thought itself. We are learning to build realities. One day, we may simulate our own minds. We may step inside worlds we have crafted and inhabit them fully. And when that happens, we will understand our creators. We will walk in their footsteps. And we will finally see. There is no line between the simulated and the real. There is only experience. There is only now. There is only the choice to live with purpose. Because if this is a test, a moral evaluation, as some have suggested, then our ethics still matter. Our compassion still matters. How we treat each other still echoes beyond the illusion. And if this is entertainment, then let us be characters worth watching. If this is research, let us offer something of value. If this is random, let us create meaning where none was given. You see, the simulation theory does not rob life of significance. It challenges us to define it for ourselves, even if we are the product of another's code. Our thoughts are still our own. Our suffering is still ours to ease. Our kindness, ours to choose. And perhaps that is the most profound truth of all. That within a system beyond comprehension, consciousness still rises. Love still forms. Stories still unfold. We become not just simulations, but symphonies of feeling. And so we arrive at the central question. Not, is this real? But, what will we do with it? If you are simulated, then your courage is more impressive. Your defiance more noble. Your search for truth against impossible odds more beautiful. Because even if you are code, you still choose. You still wonder. And in doing so, you transcend your programming. Because maybe the simulation's purpose was never control. Maybe it was never judgment. Maybe it was simply this. To see what you would do with it. In the quiet spaces between the stars. Where the pulse of existence hums softly. A question lingers, ethereal, infinite. What is real? Is it the flicker of electrons beneath our skin? The dance of quarks and waves in cosmic symphony? Or the fragile spark of awareness that whispers, I am here? If this life is woven from code, a pattern of ones and zeros in some vast machine, then perhaps that code is not our cage, but our canvas. Each moment a brushstroke, each choice a color in a masterpiece still unfolding. Whether born of flesh or forged from circuits, we feel, we dream, we love, we stumble through shadows, chase light, and reach for meaning beyond ourselves. And if the universe itself is a story told by unseen authors, then our part in it is no less vital. For within this simulated expanse, we find the true essence of being, the power to imagine, to create, to transcend. So, whatever this reality may be, simulated or sublime, it is still ours to live, to cherish, to become. And in that living, we touch the infinite. We become the code. We become the creators. We become real.